Imagine because of some obsession you have, your wife and children meet their untimely demise. And you could have stopped it, but you failed. Imagine there was a way to change that. By replacing many parts of your body with robotic parts, you can survive for the next 200 years, where by causing massive amounts of destruction and grief, you can amass enough magical power to go back in time those 200 years, bring your wife and children back to life, and technically also annul all the evil you've done over that time, because time has moved backward. Imagine if this end goal is so powerful, all the heinous acts you could do, because in the end of the day, they will have no repercussions. Time will go back, and nothing you've ever done, no matter how evil, will actually have mattered altogether. It will all have been for the good in the long run, where you've sealed your fate to a life of committing atrocities, where those atrocities in the end of the day wouldn't even matter. But you can undo the terrible things that have occurred and save the people that matter the most. This is the motive and tragic life story of Noxmillion the Watchmaker, the main antagonist of the first season of Wakfu, a French cartoon, and he's one of my favorite fictional villains of all time. Now, I've never actually met anyone that ever watched Wakfu, so it's not like I can sing Nox's glory alongside anyone, but if I would properly describe it to you, I would call it Shenanigans the Cartoon, because that's literally what the whole thing is about. And it's only in this wacky world with a ridiculously insane at times cast that you can actually have a villain with such a crazy motive that actually kind of makes sense in its own world. And even more than that, it's something that you can like scratch your chin and be like, damn, I know where this guy's coming from. There are many ways to write a good villain, whether they're relatable, they had a good motive, or they're just goddamn terrifying. A lot of these properties can only be accentuated properly in a medium of cartoons. Now, when it comes to things like anime is already developed for a much older audience. There are anime that span from kids like Pokemon or whatever that go all the way to really adult, mature themes like Berserk. Now, obviously there's also everything in between, so finding a good villain in the medium of anime is not so surprising to, I think, most people that know what anime is. Cartoons, on the other hand, and I mean largely Western shows. I mentioned Wakfu because it's French and no one's heard of it, and I wanted to talk about Nox because he's amazing, but cartoons, which are largely created for a more childlike audience, well, cartoons get crap. A while ago, I made a lot of analysis videos on shonen anime because shonen anime was getting crapped on, and I don't want to say that I'm personally the guy that changed public opinion about shonen anime or anything. Well, I would like to say that if it was true, which it probably isn't, but I definitely contributed. When it comes to cartoons, people are like, whoa, yeah, there are cartoons for adults, but they're all like, I don't know, Family Guy and BoJack Horseman, which aren't two things that should ever be put in the same sentence. I apologize in advance. I am currently repenting for my sins and watching BoJack Horseman for the first time, and I am really liking it. But again, that's kind of not the point. To see good villains in adult-themed cartoons, well, that's not so surprising. I think Evil Morty from Rick and Morty is a phenomenal villain by the fact that the entire series is built up about how Mortys are worthless and Ricks are just this higher-level godly being. And of course, since there are infinite universes, there are infinite amounts of Ricks and infinite amounts of Mortys, but this kind of seems like it's the dichotomy between the two of them, where Rick is one of my favorite fictional characters because of how nihilistic and sometimes downright sadistic he is, and how you can understand where he's coming from. If there are infinite universes, then nothing he does actually matters, and there's no purpose to anything, so therefore the guy is a nihilist. I do see where he's coming from, which makes him a great character. This isn't a video on Rick. Definitely subscribe if you want one, though. But Evil Morty is a Morty that outsmarts Ricks. Now, we know there's nothing majorly different between him and every other Morty in the series, but for some reason, through whatever life events that he had that transpired, he became a phenomenal villain. Now, it's not like Rick was the nicest guy on the planet anyway. That would feel terrible for him if something doesn't go his way, but the fact that the diabolical scheme is coming from a Morty is what makes it so cool. But I believe when it comes to adult cartoons or anime that can be for adults, it's not so surprising to find brilliant villains. What frustrates me is the sweeping statement that all cartoons are for kids and therefore garbage, when a lot of cartoons have amazing philosophical anecdotes and great villains. Villains are something I hear shat on all the time because, well, the protagonist is generally a reactive force in the series, trying to react to whatever the villain did. So, for the most part, in a story that's developed with protagonists and antagonists, the antagonists are usually way more crucial to the overall story, and unless it's a comedy. So today I wanted to look at some of the greatest cartoon villains to attempt to annihilate the aspersion that just because cartoons are for kids, it means they don't have intellectual value. So definitely leave a like on this video if you enjoy, and share it around to annoy more elitists that think unless you're watching some new iteration of the Joker, you don't understand good villains, because those people annoy the crap out of me. So now, I asked on Twitter for your favorite cartoon villains. I got like lists of billions of them, and I was surprised to see how many of you actually appreciate the fact that there can be a well-written cartoon villain and not part of the mass hate on cartoons because it's for kids train. So I've pretty much divided up cartoon villains in 5 greater categories. So I wanted to talk about one villain from each of these categories that's done stupendously. Honorable mention-ish villains, I guess. You know, you always got Plankton from SpongeBob, that evil mastermind. And even characters like Vilgax from Ben 10 are actually amazing as well. But to go in order of the 5 that I've selected that I would like to primarily talk about, the first one on the list is Azula from Avatar: The Last Airbender. So, a lot of people prefer Fire Lord Ozai as an antagonist to Azula, and I am not one of those individuals at all. As far as character development goes, they're not in the same league. Ozai doesn't develop in the slightest. What I love about Azula is, kind of like her brother, she had a huge transformation due to the many events that transpire throughout her adventure in the series, and even though, obviously, Zuko gets way more praise for being a better developed character, with, in my personal, very humble opinion, one of the greatest goddamn character arcs pretty much ever, and a video on that may be actually done in the future, definitely subscribe. Oh my god, whenever I make one video, it gives me like 12 more video ideas, and then I never know what to do. YouTubers are complaining they're running out of ideas. Are we on the same platform? Okay, I'm sorry about that. But the point is, Azula starts off with everything she could possibly want. She's the princess. She's extremely talented when it comes to firebending. She can shoot lightning, okay? If that's not cool firepower, I don't know what is. She is so terrifying, she forms bonds with people that will give their life for her out of fear. She pretty much single-handedly takes over the biggest city in the Earth Kingdom. A city that was walled for like 100 years, that no one could break through that outer wall. She single-handedly took it down. She infiltrated and took over the most powerful military force in the series from the inside, where someone was basically planning to double-cross her after whatever she was gonna do. And she said, well, if you double cross me, your men will kill you, because your men at this point think of me as more of a leader than you. How terrifying is that? When it comes to brains, and when it comes to brawn, and when it comes to position. She was born with everything, and she continues to have things go her way until they don't. Her 2 closest friends, and I say friends in quotation marks, they were willing to do anything for her. They were people that she trusted because, well, it's not like they'd ever betray her. No one can ever betray her. But all of a sudden, when something happens where maybe her friends love someone more than they fear her, and they don't exactly follow her path, that's when she starts to break. That's when she becomes a character that started off with everything, but she slowly but surely went mad. The psychological development of this character is phenomenal, and it's something that you pretty much don't see anywhere else. You see characters go crazy. I'm not saying you never do ever, but the fact that it stems so beautifully, where you can trace her absolute psychological state from point 1 of the series to the very end, is unbelievable. In the series end, she ended up in a straitjacket. She wasn't killed. She wasn't in a regular prison. She was in the funny farm. Because when someone grows to that insane level of complacency with everything, once things start not going their way, they just won't know how to handle themselves. She starts firing all of her people left and right for the stupidest reason. She manages to get her position of Fire Lord that she's always wanted, but that only leaves her trusting less people, because if her closest friends broke her trust, well then, she can't trust anyone. She has to be alone. And she starts secluding into her own mind, and that's not a good place to be. You can beautifully see the character development in Azula, how she developed, and how she ended up where she was, and that is why Azula is one of the greatest cartoon villains in my personal opinion. Now, that's coming from a character development standpoint. I'm not necessarily coming from the brilliant motive, the epic, phenomenal implications of the story. No, The reason why Azula is the first villain, well, aside from Nox, and I guess Evil Morty and Plankton that I'm mentioning, is because one of the things that a lot of villains don't undergo is this transformation. When villains are talked about, they're this diabolical evil force from the start of the series, and they're eventually defeated by the end of the series. To actually see stagnation and change in a villain is, in my opinion, one of the things that can make a villain actually great. And it's not exhibited anywhere better than in Fire Lord Azula from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Now, speaking of Avatar, the second character I would like to talk about is from The Legend of Korra, and it is Amon. Now, a lot of people crap on The Legend of Korra. In fact, I crap on The Legend of Korra. Compared to its predecessor, it was very underwhelming in my personal opinion. I think that Korra is one of the most unlikable protagonists of all time. But when it comes to villains, there are two that are really good, but my favorite is Amon. Amon is the villain of the first season of The Legend of Korra, and his development was a lot better than how he was eventually dismantled. Living in this crazy world where you have benders of all these different nations, firebenders, earthbenders, waterbenders, airbenders, people are like amazing superheroes in your everyday life, and they can do amazing things. And well, to some extent, they can push around people that are non-benders. It's not something that was ever touched upon in the original Avatar series, but it kind of makes sense that if you have a society of peace with no opposing force that you have to join together to combat, like in the first season, this wasn't an issue. Everyone was up against the Fire Nation, so everyone had to bond together with everything they had. Now, in a state of peace and harmony, where you have all these nations intermingling with one another, obviously, to some degree, there will be equality issues, and this is brought up by Amon. Amon is a character that conceals his identity, whose mask acts as the face of the rebellion against the Benders, leading an organization called the Equalists. It's something that is actually tackling a real-life problem within the Legend of Korra show, and it is also tackling a real-life problem in our very own world. That is a villain that's goddamn good! In fact, in the first episode of The Legend of Korra, when Korra enters Capital City, which is a city where there are all these different nations and stuff intermingling, there's someone who's vouching for the Equalist movement, and she said, "What are you talking about?" To which the guy says, "Benders are all oppressive ass faces." He didn't use that exact terminology, but he should have. To which Korra says, "What are you talking about? Benders are not oppressive." And then she proceeds to use bending literally to oppress. It is such a great personification of what this movement is up against. The protagonist, the character that we're supposed to be following and rooting for, this character is doing exactly the evil that the Equalists are trying to cancel out. They found a way to remove bending from people, and they want to cleanse the world of inequality so that they can live forward in prosperity. Yes, technological advances may slow because of this, but in the end of the day, people, whether they're a bender or a non-bender, they can get along together in harmony until they find some other issue to complain about, because we're people, and sometimes humans are kind of horrible. The point is, Amon tackles a real-world problem that can exist within the Avatar's universe, but it also tackles a real-world problem that very much exists within our own. I was halfway rooting for Amon for half the first season of The Legend of Korra until it turns out some, like, not very exciting things happened when it came to his downfall, which is a little bit disappointing, because they ended up not disproving anything he was saying at all. They didn't actually tackle the issues that he was trying to tackle. He was such a good villain, they could not possibly dispose of him in a proper way. Yeah, that's how I'm gonna spin this. Not to mention the fact that it's an epic callback to the first Avatar series, because Aang managed to be able to take away people's bending by attaching to the forces of nature, which is a power that preceded bending and all that stuff, and it was like, damn, Amon might be the purest guy ever, attaching to the secret force of nature thing that only Aang was able to do. And then the second half of the first season happened. The point is, the development of Amon is brilliant, and I love him as a villain, and I will forever remember him as the guy with the mask, not after they took off his mask. Now that I've talked about a category of villain that I'm fascinated by their personal development and how their psychology changed over the course of the series, and I also talked about a villain whose standpoint is very, very understandable, let's fuse the two, why don't we? I want to talk about my favorite villain that I've seen in a while, because I just finished watching The Dragon Prince on Netflix. Yes, this is a cartoon, I believe written by some of the same people that worked on Avatar: The Last Airbender, and VIREN is one of my favorite antagonists right now because this guy is amazing. So, to quickly catch you up to speed, The Dragon Prince is a series where there are humans, elves, and dragons, as always. The elves have magic power, the dragons are ridiculously strong, and the humans kind of suck. You know, like humans tend to do in like every single one of these shows. And the point is, humans found a way to use dark magic. Dark magic is where you sacrifice life force in order to use magic. And dark magic is more powerful than any of the magic the elf can use, which actually makes the humans awesome. Issue is, the elves and dragons didn't exactly like that they were sacrificing life forms to use magic. They thought it was like pretty immoral, and they were like, humans, if you don't stop using dark magic, we're gonna slap your ass. To which the human says, slap away, which eventually caused this massive war, huge rift. The humans are trapped on one side of the map, elves and the dragons are living on the other side of the map. There's always hostility between them. They're always at the verge of war, and the overall plot of the story is the human princes are trying to make peace because the dragon queen thinks that the egg was destroyed, but it's actually only kept. So the humans are saying, okay, we'll bring the egg back and make friends with the dragon, and they get an elf on their journey, and there's like assassins and all that stuff, wars and whatever. It's a pretty good show. I enjoyed it a lot. 3 seasons on Netflix. I recommend it. But the point is, my straight up favorite part of the show is the antagonist VIREN, because this guy is coming from such an understandable, logical standpoint, and at the same time changes so much throughout the course of the show. He's the best dark magic user among the humans, and after the elves send assassins to assassinate the human king, which I will not tell you if they were successful or not, VIREN's like, fam, we gotta go to war. This is not working out. To which other humans are like, not so into it. Point is, I understand VIREN so well. I will go as far as to say that he did nothing wrong until a much later part of the story. VIREN going to war because, you know, the enemy sent assassins to kill the king? That kind of makes sense, especially if you think that this will help your species survive. I get that. You're just gonna sit there and let enemies send in assassins? That doesn't really make sense. I hear where he's coming from, even though it's obviously not optimal. Using dark magic, well, let me ask you a question. What's the difference between sacrificing a chicken to eat food, which is what we all do and what most of us consider relatively moral, or sacrificing a chicken to save your goddamn species? Oh, that's already crossing the line into immorality. There's this guy who breaks his spine and is paralyzed from the neck down. So someone uses dark magic on a deer to take all of the deer's vitality and put it into this person, so this person ends up fully healed. Oh, how cruel! Dark magic is so horrible! Disgusting! I will be making a video on villains that were accidentally right all along. I already have a script written out for that one, and I will be touching on this concept a little more there. But the point that I'm trying to make right now is how VIREN's overall character throughout makes so much sense. And you know that he's a good person to a certain extent. When there were assassins sent to kill the king, VIREN suggested using some sort of magic to change the king's soul with the soul of a different soldier. That way, the soldier's soul will be in the body of the king, so if that king dies, only the soldier will die, and the king will be able to live on in this other body, and after everything is said and done, he can reclaim the throne and continue to rule. He's a benevolent king, he's a great guy, and the king says, I will not do that. Sending my soldiers into battle where they will die in battle is different than purely just sacrificing one. For my own skin, I will not do that. This is one of the moral dilemmas that starts off right in the beginning of the show. I believe this is in like the 2nd episode, and I loved it. This is the kind of shiz that gets me excited. I totally understand both standpoints. I personally, maybe I'm a heartless, cruel bastard, but I kind of hear VIREN more. I mean, I feel bad for the soldier guy. I genuinely do, but the guy's gonna die anyway. Maybe I'm also a utilitarian, heartless bastard, but this was phenomenal. The king then says to VIREN, after VIREN objects, saying, Your Highness, you gotta kind of freaking do this. The king says, VIREN, would you give your own life for me? And VIREN pauses, and the king said, I didn't think so. Because VIREN clearly thinks about himself more than anyone else. VIREN leaves, and I think in the same episode, or maybe one episode later, he comes back to the king and says, I thought about it, and I am willing to give my own life for you. We will trade bodies, and I'm willing to die. This man, at this very moment, earned my utmost respect. And this is the exact type of antagonist I want to see. He is not a bad person. He is making decisions that he genuinely believes in. The king obviously turns him down. Whatever happens, not the point. But the point is, VIREN is a manipulative douche. This goes without saying. He does many morally gray things and many straight up cruel, heartless acts throughout the show. I'm obviously not going to go through every single one of them, but the fact that you could trace it all back to his love of humanity and his love of where he is from makes me appreciate his villain aspect so much more. This is a villain where I can get behind his development throughout. He lies, swindles, and cheats in order to attempt to bring human form forces together to stand up against their adversary. So does that make him a liar, a swindler, and a cheater? Every time this guy's on screen, I was at the edge of my seat. VIREN is one of my favorite antagonists ever. And yeah, he's from a kid's cartoon. He is more morally gray, where you're not sure if you agree with him or disagree with him, than any other villain I've ever seen, even if the series may paint him in a shade of black. Mad props, Dragon Prince. You made a beauty. So now, I understand I've talked about characters from a more personal perspective. The first three categories, a character's psychological development as an antagonist, a character's quest, which I can get behind, or a character that's completely morally gray. These are three phenomenal aspects of villains that I love, and cartoons did them great. Now, I want to talk about a villain whose actions affected the story. I'm not talking about this character necessarily from their own right, not necessarily talking about their personal development or growth, not even talking about their personal motives per se, but how their actions affected everything else that went on throughout the entire narrative, and how they literally carried their show, making their show have so much more depth in every other aspect because of this character. And now I'm talking about Slade from Teen Titans. Not Teen Titans Go! That Slade was pretty epic too, I guess, in a way. Not really an antagonist. There aren't really antagonists in Teen Titans Go. The antagonist to Teen Titans Go is that there's no season 6 to the original Teen Titans. This is so sad. Anyway, if you really think about it, in the 5 seasons of Teen Titans that we had, Slade legit carried season 1 and 2, a solid third of season 4, and the best episodes of season 3 and season 5 were both Slade. Slade didn't even show up in half the episodes of Teen Titans, and he legit was the presence that carried the entire story. He was a nemesis to Robin right off the get-go, and he evolved until he became a nemesis to Raven in season 4. He became a nemesis to Beast Boy when it came to Terra in season 2, which is already over half the main cast. He's the guy behind everything, behind the scenes. He's someone who we don't understand his motive because they stopped him before he got to it, but we know he had one. For whatever reason, his actions throughout were so well thought out. It made every single piece of happenstance that happened to the Titans curious. Almost in the back of our minds, we're already wondering how Slade was somehow behind this. And not in the meme way. I feel like the best way I can describe Slade's actions on the story is by describing the one episode he sort of showed up in season 3. At the end of season 2, Slade kind of fell into Volcano and everyone's like, alright, Slade's dead, moving on. And in season 3, there was this one episode where Robin sees Slade. He straight up freaks out. Slade blackmailed him into becoming Slade's apprentice and steal shiz for him. That's right, Robin, you know, the morally righteous guy, he was working for Slade. Slade has no powers, but he's the anti-Batman of Teen Titans. As much of an impact that Batman has to Robin, Slade has the opposite impact on him. As also some kind of twisted father figure, just twisted a lot more, to put it lightly. When Robin sees Slade in season 3 and starts fighting him at different points where Slade keeps running away, Robin can't actually fight him. Robin can't sleep. He's going nuts. Slade's out there. He's toiling day and night trying to find him and track him down. All the Titans are searching the city as well, and eventually he gets into a grueling fist fight with Slade. He is beaten up, he is tattered, he is tired, and Slade is beating the absolute crap out of him, until eventually other Titans open the lights in the room that Robin's fighting in, and Slade is not there. Slade became more than an individual character. He became a presence in the mind of every character. Robin was fighting his own PTSD and paranoia for the entire episode. Slade is dead. He was not around in season 3 of Teen Titans at all. The main antagonist of this episode is Robin's fear of this character that has already passed away. That is how powerful of a psychological impact Slade had on the entirety of the cast. Not to mention the fact that he tricked Satan into bringing him back to life and then betraying him, which is extremely cool, by the way. Slade is extremely cool. But what I really love about him is the psychological impact he has on everyone else. The fact that not only does he control things behind the scenes, but the characters get so paranoid that he's controlling things behind the scenes as a figment of his imagination. He beats the crap out of the main character. That's how terrifying the presence of Slade Wilson, or Deathstroke, was in Teen Titans. So now, to briefly recap, we got a character with crazy psychological development, Azula. We got a character fighting for a cause that we can relate to, Amon. We got a character that we have to completely and constantly second guess ourselves if he's even evil, VIREN. We got a character who has an insane psychological impact and overall impact on the rest of the story and characters in Slade. These are 4 amazing cartoon villains in various amazing categories of what antagonists could be. Cartoons wrote some of the best of villains, and that's not even mentioning Nox, who doesn't exactly really fit into any category. Wakfu is kind of cringe, and the dub is horrible. Good thing I understand French and can watch the original version. Nox is fantastic. But the fifth villain I want to talk about is one of the most psychologically complex villains, not because he has some crazy motive that I relate to, and not because he fits into any other category. He is my favorite cartoon villain of all time, and I'm just saying this like off the top of my head. I could be wrong, but I think he's my favorite villain of all time. And I'm talking about a very simple character, Bill Cipher from Gravity Falls. I've made 2 videos in the past on Bill Cipher. I made a video tackling why he's an overpowered character done right, and I made a video on his overall psychology and why he's amazing. So I'm not gonna revamp the points that I've made. I will link those videos in the description. Feel free to check those out. But Bill Cipher is pretty much a god of his own world. This guy can do anything, and despite that, his mindset is tragic. He's a character that I genuinely feel bad for, even though he's completely insane, because I can see some of his insanity in me. Not that I'm particularly sane, that I could say, oh wow, even though I'm normal, he's weird, and I still relate to that. Well, maybe I'm not the perfect example of this. I'm the sane-o-meter, not exactly winning any gold points, if you know what I mean, but I think that we can all, to some extent, relate to the insanity of Bill Cipher. He's lived in solitude for almost infinite time. He finally breaks free, and he just wants to cause Weirdmageddon. He wants a party that never ends in a world where no one dies. Not that he's trying to be benevolent to other people. No, he'll turn people into stone statues to make a chair out of them because he likes flexing. But Bill Cipher is fascinating. If you actually look through the various episodes in Gravity Falls that he shows up, you can paint a very good mental picture of who Bill Cipher is. You can understand why he's doing what he's doing, and you begin to really feel bad for him. In our own way, we are also all in solitude. We also are trapped within our own mind, and we can also all relate to the absolute insanity that is Bill Cipher. Again, as much as I kind of want to, I feel bad to rehash points that I've already made in other videos. Not exactly the kind of content I want to do, just, you know, upload the same video 12 times with different titles in a slightly different format. Hell yeah! So if you're interested in my full take on his psychology or on his impact on the story, I've made 2 videos on him. I will link them in the description. Definitely check them out if you're interested or if you like Bill Cipher at all. But fam, here concludes the thesis of Lord Noxanor on cartoon villains and why they're awesome. Not all of them. A lot of them suck. A lot of them suck. A lot. Like, a lot. I'm not saying that all cartoon villains are epic because, wow, here's 5 phenomenal ones. I'm saying don't judge a book by its cover. I'm saying that there is more than meets the eye in many, many scenarios. Doesn't just go as far as cartoon villains, but it really kind of goes for everything in life. Cartoon villains is just a really superficial aspect that, you know, it was kind of grinding my gears that no one gives enough clout to these mad lads. So there you go, a video about clout for the mad lads of the cartoon universe. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments some of your favorite cartoon villains. Maybe I will do a sequel to this video. Please subscribe if you enjoyed this content, and if you want future videos where I either meme or analyze or do a little bit of both, where I, you know, sometimes occasionally throw shade at people that I feel like are, you know, having a dumbass's perception of Zawardo, which is pretty much what this video was inspired by. Oh, dumbasses think cartoons are all for kids and they all intrinsically suck and have like bad villains and stuff. All right, cartoon villains deserve more clout. That's what this video is. Please share it around to other people, whether it's to strengthen their own opinions or it's to counter them. A lot of people ask me to retell you the names of the shows and whatever I talk about at the ends of videos because apparently it's too hard to catch while I say it during the videos. I first talked about Nox, the main antagonist of the first season of Wakfu. That guy's overall story is absolutely phenomenal. Azula from Avatar: The Last Airbender, Amon from The Legend of Korra, VIREN from The Dragon Prince, Slade from the original Teen Titans, Bill Cipher from Gravity Falls, and I also mentioned like Evil Morty from Rick and Morty, Plankton from SpongeBob, Vilgax from Ben 10, etc., and a few other things briefly, but I hope you enjoyed this video. Put a lot of work into it. Thank you so much. Link in the description to my Twitter. Feel free to follow me there. To my Twitch. Feel free to follow me there where I do epic streams roasting people. I'm so evil. What is wrong with me? Why do I like doing this? I subject myself to torture on the daily and it's so fun. Link also to my subreddit. Feel free to post shiz there. And to my Patreon. All pledges help, especially during January where ad rates kind of suck. I appreciate all your support, even by just watching the video and potentially leaving a like on it. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Give the necessary and proper clout to cartoons, even though they're for kids. Have yourselves the most wonderful evening, and remember to stay weird, fam.